All right, so I'm going to go ahead and kick things off here. So just as a quick introduction, make sure everyone's kind of in the right room. So today we're going to cover security analytics with Sumo Logic and how you can help to improve your security posture by way of our security analytics offering and platform. As I mentioned at the top of the hour, my name is Jason Dunn. I'm a product marketing manager on the platform team with Sumo Logic. And really excited for today's session. This is actually the first session we've done, or at least that I personally have done around security analytics. So really excited to show you some new content. And we'll kick it off with just a couple slides, just as kind of a foundation setting piece, and then we'll jump straight into the live Sumo environment. I really want to make sure that I'm giving folks on the call today a good sense of how to actually get your hands dirty, really get comfortable with the platform, understand what its capabilities are and how it can really improve your security analytics approach within your current work. So in light of that, so I'm just gonna do a quick, like I said, this is all just sort of foundation setting. I think a lot of the challenges that we're seeing today in terms of security analytics in the market more broadly is, firstly, a really kind of lack of cloud support. So with that comes, the reality of the situation is that many tools essentially still do not actively support bringing in a lot of various forms of cloud data, and then being able to actually generate security insights on top of that. It's not the state of the world that it's a guarantee right off the bat. Secondly, limited visibility. So security insights are often really limited in scope to just a given set of data sources. It's maybe there's a tool that's really strong in just one area, but doesn't give you that broader sense. And then thirdly, down here, just limited analytics for security specifically. So it may be that an analytics platform has all the bells and whistles that you need for this for maybe an operational use case or for your DevOps team in particular, but doesn't broaden the scope or have the specificity to say this is how we're going to tackle security engineering requirements within our current organization. And the fourth more speaks to kind of workflows within your team. So I think typically you'll see a lot of tools at the moment have very manual processes built in, which can really lead to these inefficiencies in processes for SOC analysts, and lead to kind of a one-off security incident approach where you're only tackling challenges one-to-one, but not necessarily thinking about the broader sense of how you can tackle these in a more kind of automated way or in a more process-driven approach. So, with those challenges in mind, this is kind of how Sumo addresses each of those four. So Sumo very much is a cloud-native platform. We're built on AWS. We were built on AWS from the beginning. We can ingest a very wide array, whether it's database or identity and access, CDN or firewall data. So very much plays nicely with existing cloud infrastructure that you might be looking to bring in, as well as itself being built on the cloud and really allowing for that scalability that comes with that. The increased visibility aspect, there are a lot of different ways of talking about that. I think a lot of it is really going to come down to the ability to monitor and secure hybrid clouds. So, and as well as on-prem only or cloud only, it just depends on what your configuration is. And that increased visibility is really going to be helpful, and we'll get specific with that. I know that that's starting broad, but we'll show some specific ways in which we do that within the scope of the demo. And then thirdly, advanced analytics, right? So it's really our security analytics offering is really designed to help you, and we'll walk through this flow to help you to prioritize, investigate, respond to active security incidents. So it's very specific to those sets of use cases. And then fourth would be the ability to automatically triage those security insights as they come in. So really helping to improve processes and automate a lot of those much more manual processes. So with that, I'll just jump ahead. We'll, like I said, I do want to make sure that we leave plenty of time for the demo so we can get live in the platform. But I'll just show you a couple quick screenshots before we do so, as kind of more of a foundation setting so that you understand the broader scope of where security analytics sits within Sumo Logic. So what you see here is what we consider security intelligence within Sumo. So for anyone that was able to join previous PCI compliance webinars or broader compliance webinars with Sumo, which we've run in months past or even years past, you'll be very familiar with that aspect of the security intelligence solutions. Security analytics, obviously being what we're focused on today. Here we're showing the kind of classic AWS security overview dashboard, which we'll show live in the environment. This is where security analytics is what we'll really focus on today. So this is where you'll get the deep search capabilities, data enrichment and visualization by way of the dashboards, threat feed integration within those given dashboards. And then Cloud SIM will a little bit put aside for today. An upcoming webinar with my teammate Dana Torgerson will be able to walk through more of the details around how you can perform continuous correlation, even more tie-ins back to this previous slide of repeatable workflows. A lot of that will tie into Cloud SIM more closely. And then automation of kind of your incident prioritization, alert triage, and noise reduction. So think of that as an additional bonus. Today, we'll really focus on the core piece, which is security analytics, which I think we'll have a lot of fun kind of chatting through today. So as I said, this is really the focal point for today. The security analytics platform gives you the ability to process, investigate, respond to security incidents. And the kind of core features of that security analytics platform are out-of-the-box app catalog content, which I'll be able to show you today. Subqueries, lookup tables, built-in feeds, all give you a lot more context, whether you're using GeoLookup for mapping or CrowdStrike with the built-in threat intel feed. And then raw text searching, obviously, is very core. I mean, the log analytics piece of what Sumo offers is very critical to being able to really find that needle in a haystack and successfully navigate to precise levels of detail that give you understanding of what the right messages are that you need to be kind of unpacking and better understanding, or summarizing for that matter. And then script actions or calling Lambda functions, of course, would be very helpful for more of an automated approach to how you would tackle security analytics. Custom queries, more complex operators, field extraction rules as well would help you to really generate those fields for those queries that we've described in the previous bullets. So prioritizing threats really is going to come down to generating those actionable security insights. So this can, again, be whether you're leveraging on-prem, hybrid, cloud data across the board, you're really going to be able to surface the most relevant insights. We often say we don't necessarily think that a security engineer should necessarily need to live in a dashboard, right? I mean, you should be able to surface just the correct insights at the right time, whether that's on an hourly cadence or a daily cadence or a weekly cadence. We want to make it easy for you to generate the right insights, whether that's looking more closely at firewall traffic or investigating into unexpected outliers within your VPC flow data. We want to help you to prioritize those threats more readily. And secondly would be deep investigations. So this is where we'll chat through and I'll show you a couple examples of queries within the platform we'll show live. This is actually Zoom data, which interestingly we've seen some of our customers utilize in order to better understand Zoom activity, make sure that, A, you're preventing the classic Zoom bombing use case, or B, that you have better understanding into what the current uses are of Zoom, and that there's correct sort of security and privacy hygiene around use of passwords, for example. And that's going to really allow you, by way of these queries, to dive deeper into incidents and allow you to really explore all those detected insights that we referenced in the previous slide through the dashboards. So by way of using the native query language, it really allows you to navigate quickly to that precise level of detail that I alluded to earlier. And then accelerating response. So I'll show an example where, by way of our Slack webhook, that you can actually a little bit sit back and wait for those alerts to come in. Then you kind of build the response plan around that. And then you can actually come full circle back into a dashboard. And this, again, broadening that back out, it really will allow you to improve your security posture and accelerate those incident response times and take action on those relevant alerts. So you'll have specific responses that you can really take by way of the dashboards. And then user activity. So, at the end of the day, user level granularity, whether it's in a query or a dashboard or an alert for that matter, really will help you to pinpoint those unexpected anomalies. You can see kind of a little bit of a low point up to a spike in this event by severity over time in Okta data. And we'll show a live example of that, of how we can actually get into that. So this is just a quick overview of what we're going to cover. It kind of echoes some of the slides we just walked through. So AWS security overview. We'll do more of a executive dashboard for more of a management use case for looking at vulnerabilities and thinking more broadly of how you're managing all those incidents, and also the team more widely. Malware outbreak is where we can get more specific to a query and then look at the broader dashboard. SOC KPI for more of a workflow approach or workflow view, I should say. And then investigation response ULM is where we can look at how you can start with Slack and just wait for the alerts and kind of be a little bit more reactive in that moment to what the alerts are that are coming in, and then act accordingly. And then Azure and Okta both are focused around user activity. So getting really granular with those specific users that are showing anomalous behavior that need to be acted on. So with that, I'm gonna switch gears into the live platform, and I'll just take a quick drink of water, and then we can take a look at the app catalog, and we'll walk through all those dashboards that we just described here. Okay, so if you're on this webinar, you likely are quite familiar with Sumo Logic. So I may actually skip over just a quick intro of the overall UX. I think you probably by now have a sense of kind of going into new, generating a log search, knowing that you can generate a dashboard through this view as well, or a metrics query for that matter. The ability to view shared content and then manage data, whether you want to look more closely at logs, metrics, how you're actually collecting that data. I do want to give a little bit more of I do want to give a little bit of a dive into the app catalog itself, and give a shout out to the compliance and webinar section, compliance and security webinar section here, which will show you basically everything that is security oriented in any way, shape, or form, right? So essentially what you'll see here is, whether it's AWS network firewall data, whether it's Carbon Black, or if you're a Duo security customer and you want to have more visibility, you would have access to out-of-the-box content for each of these. And if you were in the compliance webinar previously, you'd remember the PCI compliance dashboards are all available just straight out of the app catalog, ready to go right here. So for example, if you're a Zscaler customer, and you want to have more visibility into firewall usage, you'd be able to very quickly just add to library. This will, you can set up permissions to make this available more widely, or just keep it within your private catalog. And then you could assign, maybe you just do a wildcard on Zscaler, in which case you can actually indicate, okay, this is going to point to all the Zscaler data within our instance of Sumo. Then you just hit add to library, and you're just off to the races. You'll have a Zscaler dashboard live and ready to go very quickly. And so with that, I'll just switch out of the app catalog, and we can start looking more closely at specific dashboards. So yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, this is kind of a nice, quick, broader overview. We can see here guard duty data is coming in, as well as VPC flow. There are a lot of different ways to visualize that data. So here we can see, when we look at firewall traffic, we can actually see bytes received versus bytes sent. As we might expect, bytes received is very much taking up the lion's share of the bytes that are kind of crossing through the system, which is interesting in its own right. And we can actually do some investigations, whether we do a drill down query or just kind of look at it in a more visual sense. We can set up alerts around that as well. If we look more closely, just to show what it looks like to actually drill down from the dashboards, we can see that we're taking a look at VPC flow data. In particular, we're actually parsing out that data, so that by way of, because this is in JSON, it makes it that much easier to quickly parse out the data. And we can look at message, log stream, log group, really get more specific with how we categorize the data. And then we can parse out these more specific fields as well. So beyond just JSON, we're looking here at version, account ID, interface ID, and that's what's allowing us to have that level of detail back within the dashboard when we look at this. So at the base here, we see outliers, right? So the threshold is very much something that can be controlled or adjusted. These pink triangles here are indicators that we're going outside of the expected behavior within this scope of this specific time slice. So we do see that in this time slice, we didn't expect very much activity, and we're actually seeing a spike, which we could then set up an alert on in order to be able to act on that more readily. Or we could just operate within the dashboard, keep a close eye on it, and really kind of operate on the assumption that any of these outliers are action items, and then we can adjust the thresholds as we go. We could also adjust this to say we want to do over 24 hours and do a slightly less sensitive sense of how we look at those at that outlier data to really drive to resolution on that point. So jumping ahead to, as I mentioned, there's kind of this more executive dashboard, as we call it, more of a managerial view of how you're looking at all of the vulnerabilities within your system. So in this case, we can see that we're looking at 714 assets all in. There's kind of a breakout of the vulnerability distribution by age. So you can see kind of how that evolves. And then maybe most interestingly, we can actually see severity levels in pie chart format, right? So we can see that level 2 is sort of the majority of the vulnerabilities that we want to be digging into more closely. But at the same time, as you kind of rise up the levels, it's still a significant percentage. Thankfully, the highest level is the lowest percentage, but for sure there are significant vulnerabilities to address and kind of follow up on more deeply. You can also see it based on type, whether it's potential, fixed, or confirmed, and even tied back to specific CVEs that can then point you in the right direction as far as better understanding what needs to be addressed and how to actually go about doing that. And you can kind of triangulate across these various dashboards that we're looking at today. For anyone that was in the PCI compliance webinar in previous months, you'll remember this this look at malware and update, look at how anti-malware software is being updated, as well as the actual malware activity itself. So this can be really interesting from a security analytics perspective, because this is going to really tell us what's going on within the system and give us a better sense as well of kind of what the update schedules are, how many users are being specific. There's that kind of user level activity that we can really drill into, and then even get into file level if we want to go more granular than that. And we can see in this case that not just the lion's share, but every last one of the pieces of malware that's present within the system is assigned or connected to this app category of cloud storage, which in of itself is very relevant detail that could be acted upon in order to really build a process for how you would approach potential concerns around malware. And then you can also see here more level of detail. So if we start getting into malware types that are actually affecting unique user IPs, you can see Trojan versus malicious app and the various breakdowns within that. And then just getting a little bit more granular with how we actually dig into malware assessment and better understanding from a security analytics perspective how we might want to address it. We can see here that we're actually extracting host here, and then we're setting up a time slice, doing a count distinct, and then we're actually just sorting this by count distinct. So we're seeing the most common pieces of malware based on this CrowdStrike data that we're looking at. You can see generic, maybe not as interesting to see generic here. So we'll just kind of move beyond and look at Trojan Win32. We can see more broadly, it's being categorized as Trojan as item 4, adware, riskware. So you can see all of everything that's being associated with each of these, and then where you might want to dig in more deeply. You can also get a lot more specific at the message level, right? So mostly we've looked at dashboard panel level and then query level as it impacts, or just as it spits out an aggregate. But if you also want to get much more specific from there, this is where that needle in the haystack work can really be valuable. You can start looking at the message level detail as well and saying, here are the columns that are associated with host or with result. But then what if I want to actually see the raw message and learn something more within that? Maybe even learn more about how I can evolve and improve the query in order to pull out more interesting fields that we're not pulling out just yet. Looks like there might be a chat here. So yeah, feel free to pop into Q&A, as we mentioned in the chat. If you do have questions, then at the end of the session today, we'll be able to take questions. We're kind of running up against the last 8 minutes or so of the session, so we'll definitely make sure I leave 4 or 5 minutes at the end in case there are questions around security analytics with Sumo. So the next piece would be SOC KPIs, right? So again, this is more of a managerial view from a team level perspective, where we can see what the activity level on the team is writ large. We can see the number of insights total is 21, and then the number of closed insights is 21. So we might take this as a good thing. There are no open insights in this particular instance. The average mean time to detect is 53 hours versus and then mean time to respond is 48 hours. So these are kind of these key KPIs or metrics that can be tracked at the team level in order to really navigate to, what kind of improvements you might want to make as a larger team. And I think also you can get very specific, right? So you can say, what is the risk level over time, and really look at that granular time-based approach of saying day to day, what is our risk level and how are things improving or changing, or what are the environmental conditions that we need to be responsive to as well. So for the next piece, I'll look at investigation response console ULM. So we're, just to address what's actually in the panels first, and then I can show you kind of how we can navigate to this by way of more of a response flow. We can see network CPU host activity, and then we can see authentication attempts for AZ range. So obviously, great example of a case where you want to keep a very close eye on authentication attempts. Particularly, you're going to want to drill into failed authentication attempts, but this broader view is a good starting place. We can also see threat breakdown by resource, so broken down by guard duty, Office 365, ELB. So a little bit different angle on how you might break down or understand what threats are coming in through the system. We see here scanned events by environments. So we see a spike most recently in the last 10 minutes or so that may want to be addressed. And we can also see quickly by hovering over that it looks like VMware is responsible for the lion's share of that spike. So maybe an area of attention that you might want to drill into. You also see geo mappings, hotspots on the map accordingly, matching to what sort of data is coming into the system, or what the insights are that are coming in. I'm going to quickly show what a flow would look like within Slack here. So what you can see here is a set of ongoing alerts through Slack webhook. And then, so we can see here a detected Trojan instance. The alert describes any network traffic activity associated with a single IP having failed authentication attempts. So we can go to SecOps dashboard, which we've now seen already. This is actually the same dashboard we just looked at a moment ago. It'll pop open the most relevant dashboard for the use case, and we can break down by IP. We can actually pop that IP or destination IP in and then kind of act accordingly, according to what we actually are finding based on these insights after we've drilled down into this IP. And just for the interest of time, I'll just jump to what the response might be, which is that you can actually go and act on this, and from Slack, just confirm that you want to then quarantine host. And make a decision on the spot based on the insights that you found within this given dashboard. So that's just kind of one approach that you can take as you're drilling in. But do you want to leave an extra minute here as well, as we're talking about user activity? You can look at sort of user activity within Azure specifically. You can see resource deletions, resource creations, top 10 users within the system, as well as events by users. So you can get more specific as far as how Ankit at cxe.com versus Bruno at cxe.com are actually having events tied to those specific users. So it's an interesting kind of Azure use case. And then there's also Okta here, right? So I think this is an interesting place to look, because you get obviously a lot of user level detail that is going to come in through Okta data that you're bringing into Sumo Logic. You can see top 10 active users within the system, user events by severity, right? So you'll see error details, debug details. In this particular instance, it looks like we're getting a lot of warns on one particular user event, which is user session.start. We're getting a significant portion of warns. So might be something we want to drill into there. And then event severity over time, we can see a little bit of a spike sort of at the beginning of the 24-hour mark, which we might expect due to seasonality, or it might be something to drill into. And then just to quickly show, if we have a particular user that we're interested in learning more about, we can kind of single out and better understand what's going on kind of at that user level, and then kind of be able to navigate to that and build an action plan around that. So we actually see that in this case, we're looking at Matt Egan in particular, which we set a filter for, and we see that it sort of mirrors the behavior that we saw. We saw a spike about 24 hours ago in activity, and then it spikes very slowly or very gradually, but it stays in generally the same ballpark. And then we see a drop off, but mostly is driven by that's just the most recent data coming into the system. So that's still being loaded in. So we'll kind of put that aside, but then we can also see like these specific user events by severity, and that might be something that we want to drill into as well. So we're looking like we're a little bit up against time. I'll just say really quickly that, for folks that are just getting to know Sumo in a broader sense, we have 2,100 plus customers, 27 exabytes of data is being scanned monthly, 800 petabytes of data analyzed daily, over 800, and then 1.6 quadrillion events scanned daily. So very much a system and a platform that operates at a very large scale and has the ability to scale quickly according to your needs. I did want to give a quick shout out, and I can share this out just in the comments as well, for various resources that we have available to folks if they want to kind of follow up, get into more detail. We have our security analytics overview, a kind of short and sweet version of what I did today in demo video form, a broader look at security intelligence, right, which would include audit and compliance as well as Cloud SIM, and then security analytics brief if you want to get into more detail. The Slack will kind of point you to more resources. And did want to give a quick shout out, if you're excited about the platform, feel free to fire up sumologic.com/sign up. And there you can just get started, really get to know the platform in a more, just kind of get your hands dirty and really dive in. And almost all, if not all of the content that I've showed today is absolutely available just straight out of the box. So feel free to dive in there and just really get to know the platform and spend some time on the security analytics offering and getting to know kind of those dashboards and the kind of all of the underlying queries within them. So with that, I'll kind of looks like we don't have any questions for now. I'll give it a minute or two in case people have any parting thoughts in the Q&A, and I'm more than happy to follow up. And if not, then I will, feel free to reach out to me. I'll actually add my email in the, I'll add my email in the chat as well, and then we can kind of take it from there if you have any follow-up items for me. So thanks so much for joining today, and really looking forward to future sessions as well. We have quite a few webinars coming up, including Cloud SIM, which would help to kind of close out the larger security intelligence suite. So thanks so much for joining today, and have a great rest of the day. Cool. So it looks like we had a question come in from Mario, which is, are these dashboards available for Microsoft Azure cloud instances? So yeah, so the answer is a resounding yes. And sorry, I just want to add something quickly to the chat. I realized I was just setting it to the panelists only. So feel free to pop in there if you want to look at resources and email. But yeah, so Mario, yeah, so we definitely have a wide array of Azure cloud offerings. Essentially what that will give you, and I can just show you really quickly here within the platform, is It's a lot of the same content that we've shown for AWS today, as well as basically as well as Azure. So just to be specific, you can sift through Azure Active Directory, Azure Audit, AKS if that's something that you're using, Azure SQL, and then a much broader sense of Azure as well. We work with a lot of customers that are on Azure, and absolutely that's a use case that we can tackle with you. So hopefully that's helpful, and definitely reach out to me if you have further questions. I'm more than happy to get into more detail on the Azure side, especially as it pertains to security analytics in particular. Cool. So that looks like that covers the questions for today. So thanks again, everyone, for joining, and we're looking forward to seeing you on future sessions. Have a good rest of the day.